Today I'm going to make presents for our Planner Day Christmas party, which is on Sunday. I'm going to use black paper and my goal is to put this in a picture frame. So I have decided to put it on black paper. The frame is going to be white. So I thought a black piece of paper on a white frame would look really nice. I am going to write a quote in calligraphy. I've got my calligraphy gloves on, and the reason I use gloves is because the oils from your hands can sometimes affect paper. This isn't normal paper that I'm using. It is calligraphy paper, which is different to like your photocopying paper or your planner paper, for example. It's a special type of paper that can absorb inks. So I use the gloves so that the oils from my hands won't affect it. I'm going to use Copperplate as my main hand. Copperplate is done with a pointed pen, which is one of these. So there are different nibs for different types of hands. So this is an oblique pen holder. As you can see, it's a straight pen holder with an angled nib holder as well. So this angle is at 55 degrees. Before you even get started, I'm going to draw my lines. And the reason being is, like I said, everything with Copperplate is at 55-degree angles. So when you're ruling lines, I have a ruler. This is a calligraphy ruler, and it has, I don't know if you can see, but unlike any other ruler, it does have an angled edge, and that edge is 55 degrees. Your top hole up here would be for your ascenders. Ascenders are for letters with stems like D, B, H. So that would be for your ascenders. Your descenders is this hole down the bottom, and that would be for your letters like J, G, and Y. And this bit here where it's got the X's, that's your X height, and that would be the height of your low caps. It's a nifty little ruler, this. Okay, so this ruler has also different lengths, so different heights. So for example, it's got your 7mm height, 6mm down to a 3mm height. So that's the smallest writing. I'm going to be using 7mm for the header, 4mm for the body, and then I'm going to use a 6mm for the final word. This is what it is with calligraphy. Even before you do anything, you draw your lines, which is why it takes so long to do a piece. It's not just you're writing out a piece, you have to do the prep. Okay, so with the header, there are no descender letters, so I'm just doing the X height and the ascender letter. And then I'm going to use the edge to mark out my angles. Okay, so that's 7mm, and for the body I'm going to make it 4mm. And with this, I'm going to be doing all of the lines. So you've got your ascenders, your X height, and your descenders. Just because I know the quote that I'm using has both ascender and descender letters. Okay, so I'm going to need 2 more lines. I'm just going to rub out the middle part of the quote. Only has 1 letter with an ascender and a descender. The rest of it only has ascenders. So I'm just going to rub out the descender line. I'm going to use 2 types of lettering with my quote. So the majority of it is going to be copperplate, but I do want 1 word in capital letters in italic. Italic is a little bit different than copperplate. You don't need the 55-degree angle. It's just a straight line. So I'm just going to rule up where I think it's the best. Italic, which is what I'm going to use for this word, is done with a broad nib pen, which is different to copperplate. This is your copperplate pen. The nib is a pointed nib, as you can see. Okay, so as you can see here, the broad nib is a straight nib rather than the pointed pen where it's pointy. And so the majority of the hands for calligraphy, you will use a broad nib. You'll only use a pointed pen for copperplate. Each broad nib has different widths of the nibs as well, whereas with pointed pen, it's just a pointed pen. There is no changes in nib sizes, but there are different copperplate nibs as well. So for this particular one, I'll be using a 2mm broad nib pen, which I will put aside. It's about to get noisy because I'll be using this ink. It's pink and you can see the shimmer on the bottom. I also have a machine, it's a magnetic stirrer. I've put a magnet in this container. I'm going to put it on the magnetic stirrer. It'll stir the ink. This is my ink station, and this is where I work. All of my favorite inks are here. This is my magnetic stirrer there. So all the inks with the shimmer on it, like this green one, you can see the shimmer on the bottom. So inks like that and this pink one, they need to be stirred all the time while I'm working. So I just put a magnet in the jar, and with the magnetic stirrer it just stirs it. I can increase the level of the stirring as well. It does get noisy, but you just have to learn to block it out so that you can just keep working. When you're using Copperplate as your hand, the general rule is press down on the downstroke to make the thick lines, and then lighter on the upstroke to make the thin lines. So dark on the downstroke, light on the upstroke, and then heavy on the downstroke. Now with this next letter, it's the letter L, and I'm going to go above the ascender line because I'm going to do a flourish on it. If you're not going to do a flourish on the stem of your letter, you just use the ascender line, or the ascender line. But in this case I'm going to do flourish, so I'm going to just go above the ascender line, and again heavy on the downstroke, and I'll add the flourish after I do the word. Okay, this is when you do the flourish. There you go. It's a little flourish. Flourishes can be as extravagant and elegant as you want it, or it could also be just a plain flourish. It doesn't need to be arty or top heavy, you know what I mean? Sometimes less is more, as they say. The thing with flourishing as well, it needs to be balanced. So as you can see on the top here, I've got the flourish going that way. So if I do the flourish going that way, it won't be balanced, but I've got the flourish going this way so that it kind of balances out. Okay. I'm just going to clean my nib. Cleaning nibs are pretty easy. Soap, water and a toothbrush, or alcohol and baby wipes. The X height for a broad nib is 5 nib widths. I've got the lines and I'm using my toothpick just to measure out my nib widths. And whenever you're using a new pen, I always have a scrap piece of paper, because when you dip your nib in the ink, I always splotch it so you don't get an overly heavy liquid onto your paper. Now I'm going to change these up too. The style of hand I'm using now with the broad nib pen is Italic, and you don't need to be on a 55-degree angle. It'll just be a straight. I just have a water jar next to my ink table or my ink station. I just give a little splosh in the water jar, and then I'll just wipe it off with baby wipe. And if there's still some ink on it that I can see, because I'm not gonna use a toothbrush, water and soap at the moment because I've got a lot to do. I'm just going to dip it in the alcohol. Just quickly. This is the cheater's way of cleaning your nib. Okay, and you have to dry it as well because it will rust. It's made out of steel. And if you don't dry it, it will rust. I'm going to be doing a flourish. I'm going to rub out some of the lines, just so I can see better where my flourish will go. Obviously don't rub any of the lines off unless the ink is dry, otherwise you will make a mess. Okay. I'm just going to add a couple of flourishes to finish off the piece. I'm going to do that with my pointed pen again and some gold ink. There we go. Now sometimes when you do the thin lines, you'll need to go over it a couple of times, especially with gold, because sometimes it doesn't transcend. So I'm just going to go over it just ever so slightly, moving the paper along as well. That's better, just to enhance the gold a little. It's important to note too that when you are doing calligraphy, you have to be careful not to drop your pens, because once you drop your pen and the nib part of your pen hits the floor, it's all over. You need to then change the nib because it damages it. I'm going to finish this piece off with a bit of glitter, just using a little bit of my pot of gold here. You need to use a very, very fine paintbrush. It's been drying for a while, and we'll rub out the lines and see what we have. There you go. I'll just turn the light off. There you have it. It looks good.